Good morning and welcome to the Autotalk Weekly Wrap. Now, I'm sorry, there is a little large rat of a dog barking behind me. His name is Teddy. It is episode 21. The show can do a yardie now or some shots. I'm not sure what it is these days. It's probably all these young people probably just do some wheatgrass shots and then move on. Make a post on Facebook and that's it. But anyway, we will be the ones having the party. And if we're speaking of parties, let's quickly talk again about Autotalk Live, our wonderful event that is coming up at Catalina Bay in Hobsonville, Auckland on November 11, where that man in the middle, Graham, and I will be hosting, and a whole pile of great industry guests are coming along. We have a few little updates to cover off since. Obviously, the tickets are well on sale now. If you haven't gone to the site, do go to autotalk.co.nz/live. And buy your tickets now because they are going to run out, I believe. And if, we do require in there that you name the people coming. Just if you need to work out later who that is, just put your name in on multiple tickets and we can always add that later. Or if you're struggling with that, you can email Deborah at automediagroup.co.nz and she will sort that out for you. But don't forget to get in soon and buy those tickets. Now, a couple of companies to thank. We have some sponsors that have come on board. Our great friends at AutoHub, they are the gold sponsors for the event. AutoSure is a silver sponsor. AdTalk Edge is a silver sponsor. TradeMe Motors are sponsoring the breakfast. So you can have a muffin and so forth on TradeMe.
We'll eat well on TradeMe. Yep.
CFS Finance are sponsoring lunch, and I'm expecting good things from that lunch. I believe there might be mini hamburgers there. Yeah, I'm all about that. And then for the all-important networking drinks and nibbles, Mannheim, specifically I think the Mannheim Remarketing Division out there in South Auckland, they are helping us with the rather hefty bar tab for that one. So thank you to those sponsors for coming on board. And as I kind of said last time, it's these guys that are helping keep those tickets down in comparison to other events of this kind. Those tickets are... Yeah. Pretty darn good value. So support those sponsors as they support events like this. It's great to have them on board. So let me just pull up the totally incorrect schedule for today that I had sitting up on my screen.
So you guys get a schedule, I don't.
If you wish to make the schedule, Graham, I'm more than happy. More than happy.
I just go, buy.
Right, so now let's start with the news with Turners. Turners saying that their sales are well ahead of pre-COVID levels. And they've opened a new dealership, 2 more on the way. In spite of the COVID-19 pandemic and ongoing market uncertainty, Turners Automotive Group reports that it's comfortably exceeding many of its pre-COVID operating metrics. Turner says it sold 22,170 cars in 2022. That's a 27% list on the 16,179 it sold in 2019. Auto retail market share grew too, from 4.85% to 6.55%. The news comes as Turner opens the doors to a new site in Nelson. Hopefully that's survived the terrible flooding down there, and I hope all our friends down the Upper South Island are staying safe. It also confirmed that renovations to its Rotorua facility are almost complete, and it is committed to opening 2 new branches. Now, one thing they did say was that they've, and you may have a little more on this, Matthew, that they considered buying NZAI.
Yeah, interesting one. During the sort of shareholder question and answer section of the presentation yesterday, it's reported that one of the shareholders asked a question. They didn't necessarily name NZAI in the question, but the question was something along the lines of, there's another company out there that's going through some strife at the moment. Have you guys, considered throwing them some support? And the answer was no. It's been discussed. It has been discussed, but no, they won't be. They won't be cutting in. And NBR also had a little piece on this as well. I think interesting to have that brought up. I'm sure that. I guess my thought was: would something like that be an unprecedented thing in the motoring sphere, or is that sort of?
I think the unprecedented thing would be if they said that they were going to do it before they did it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, look,
Any negotiations around that are going to be fairly sensitive, particularly with the low price that those shares are currently trading at. I can't see Turners being able to swoop in and buy it on the open market at whatever it is, like 50 cents a share or something like that. But could Todd Hunter have had a call with Eugene Williams about his 30-odd%? Quite possibly. But do they want in on that mess?
Well, I was going to say, look, they're doing the job that any board of directors should do, and you'd argue and say that's exactly why Turners have been as successful as they have been, because they've got a board that's obviously making some good calls and decisions. And you'd have to say, given the strife that Too Cheap have been, any good board would look at that and give it the sniff test and see if it might fit. I would say, like you just said, Richard, if it's made it to a AGM or at least at a board meeting where it's raised in public, the issue's already well done and dusted. It's too late, so to speak. But I'd also think that I can't see how the Too Cheap model would necessarily fit the Turners model, as it's not about real estate, because if you think about where the Too Cheap sites are, they are by and large will be just duplicating Turners sites, at least in the regional centres anyway. A lot of the Too Cheap sites don't fit the Turners model, if you like. Too Cheap have been far more about warehousing, brownstone sites, things like that, and having smaller pop-ups. I'm not sure the stock mix would be of any benefit to them. The sourcing would be any benefit to them. It'd be more a case of literally buying a competitor, like buying a competitor out of the market is how I'd see it. And obviously, Turners have evaluated that and decided that the Too Cheap model at this stage doesn't warrant the expenditure to buy a competitor out at that level.
Mm-hmm. I mean, good on Turners, full stop, for their performance over the last year. I guess it's been the strong thing for them is that they obviously had some fairly secure sourcing contracts in place already through various lease and fleet companies, and in a market where people are starved for stock, there's profit there, and they've ticked along quite well. And I think they've also done pretty well in continuing that whole branding over to being this kind of trusted used car operation, as opposed to what when I was young was the you go down the auctions to buy potentially a slightly shady bargain. They're just not that anymore, and they've done a pretty good job, I think, of changing over.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, on to another listed company. Colonial Motor Company has confirmed record profits again. The Colonial Motor Company has released its preliminary results for the financial year ending June 2022, confirming record trading profit after tax. In a statement, the group said it ended the year with a trading profit after tax figure of 33.35 million, a 19% year-on-year rise relative to last year's 27.92 million. And I imagine they'll be looking forward to an even better coming year, knowing how strong they are in the Ford space, with a heck of a lot of new generation ranges coming. But I gather they had some commentary on the Clean Car Scheme, Matthew, in their results.
Yeah, so they made two points around why last year was strong. They mentioned that apart from March of this year, most of this year's been quite weak for them, the last 7 months before June 2022, barring obviously that 1 month in March when every man and their dog went and registered a ute for their local dealership. I suspect that they didn't necessarily comment too much about the new Ranger in particular, but I'm sure they're rubbing their hands together because that's going to be quite a compelling product for them. They also talked about the role that trucking and tractors have played in their sort of sales mix in the last financial year as well. It sounds like they had they made a pretty big contribution.
I was going to say the Southpack operation has always had a reputation in the industry of being particularly well managed, well focused, and strong, with two very strong. One of them certainly premium brands, where it's not so much around the cost itself as it terms the product that's delivered, and they've always had that reputation. But Colonial in general, if you think back, sort of even going back 10 years, Colonial's had a reputation for a long time of being an exceptionally well managed business. And our trade, I think we tend to lose sight sometimes that whether it's franchise or it's non-franchise, there's actually some really good operators out there just carrying on doing what they do really well. They've got good board structure, good board discipline, really strong focus. They concentrate on the brands that work, and they're just quietly chugging away in the background, getting it done. And Colonial is a good example of that. I mean, I've yet to see a really poor analysis at any stage of Colonial's business. And yeah, they're a bit lucky having good franchises too, although you'd argue that without the Ranger, Ford New Zealand would be in serious trouble. But they've got it, and so therefore they're going to do well.
I've always thought the interesting thing with Colonial, certainly from the vehicle dealership perspective, is they haven't tried to overly corporatize the operations within their group. They've all generally got quite strong, well-known personality dealer principles, and I think that helps those dealerships become, part of their community, and has stood them quite well over time, as in comparison to some of the other groups where perhaps sometimes the dealerships can lose their identity a little bit because they don't have that personality in the leadership. Now, this story is just hilarious. I love it. It's terrible in so many ways. Fake LVVTA certification plates have appeared on AliExpress. Counterfeit low-volume Vehicle Technical Association certification plates were merged for sale at an unlikely source. It's a likely source. It's always going to happen. The Chinese-owned online marketplace AliExpress. The fake plates are currently offered by 2 different sellers in China, priced for approximately $40 shipped for a single plate, or offered in groups of 4 for approximately $80 shipped. One store even offers to customize your plate, presumably filling out all the data fields with your vehicle details, for approximately $130. Do we know how many have been sold so far, Matthew?
Would they tell you?
Great. Very bizarre story. Great story. So going by these purely on the ones that are currently listed for sale there, and looking at the sale fees, well, not the fees, but the how many have sold underneath each thing. There's about a bit over 200 plates that have sold, and presumably they're all coming here. No one else is going to want them. So yeah, it's a. I had a brief chat to the LVVTA, and they sort of, they assured me that they're taking it pretty seriously. They're aware of them. They sent me the material they sent me included stuff that was dating all the way back to 2013, 2014. So this is something that counterfeit plates of some way or of some form have obviously been a talking point there for almost 10 years now, if not longer.
Those have all been sold for display purposes. You know it. Come on.
Sure,
These people are putting them on their shelves to show off their LVVTA plate.
Of course they are, Richard. Of course they are. Just like those bin tags you can buy every now and then that are, again, completely above board, which you put into your above board firewall on your car that you display over the mantelpiece as well. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I've had 2 cars with LVVTA plates, and I'm not entirely sure what they added to the process, to be honest. When my AW11 being switched from a 1.6 litre Toyota non-turbo engine to a 1.6 litre Toyota non-turbo engine, I was never entirely sure why it needed one for that purpose, but apparently it does. But this will be interesting. I'm sure plenty of those plates will be cruising around the strip in Hamilton on a Friday night. But
there's an interesting point there, Richard. Does this highlight the fact maybe that the LVVTA system is needlessly complicated and onerous in its prescription? And like you said, if you change your vehicle from a 1.6 litre to 1.8 litre, for example, or you add an intercooler, or because this is one of the things that we see with trades and bits and pieces coming on through with plates is, what have you got a plate for? I mean, how prescriptive does it need to be for an LVVTA plate? And all the questions in about if it goes for a warrant of fitness, or the vehicle's revinned, or there's this change here or that change there, what does it mean to your plate? Have you got to get it revinned? Have you got to get it recertified? There's this huge big grey area of a lack of knowledge amongst the trade in general, and definitely then therefore buyers and sellers of cars and operators. Is it just the system is just overly complicated by bureaucracy?
I think it certainly needs to be looked at. I mean, look, I understand the role of the LVVTA in the heavy transport space, and certainly at the more extensive end of the modification range.
Well,
but at the lower range, there's a lot I would suggest could be answered by the warrant of fitness scheme in a far more efficient and probably just as safe way. And it would take some pressure off the LVVTA system, which has been under stress in recent years. They've had a shortage of inspectors. My understanding has been certain inspectors have kind of been picking and choosing what they want to deal with because of that shortage, which is particularly a problem in the motorhome space, I believe. Perhaps they do need to review the system to an extent.
Case closed. I'll go to AliExpress now and see if I can get one. And look, just a little bit there. Since time immemorial, there have been people finding ways around the system. So whether it's warrant of fitness labels down at the pub, or it's registration paperwork, or the old days of remember the old JAI certificates? The printing press with the JAI, rather than paying your 70,000 yen tax for someone to produce the paper, just produce it yourself. We've got MR2A issues, we've had VIN tag issues. I mean, this is registration labels, although here in West Auckland, no one even bothers putting a fake registration label on your car. Just drive it around with the label already expired by 6 months. Nobody cares. This is just yet another part of a system, and there's always going to be loopholes. I don't believe there's any system that's going to be completely loophole free. Somewhere, somehow, people are going to exploit it. The only difference here is it's an offshore provider or something.
Yeah. Let's go to the last story of the day, and that is more about doing loops than loopholes. The muscle car is going electric. Dodge is debuting an EV charger, and they have shown this car now. It does look pretty darn good, I think. I could probably actually show it if I try. Tell us a little about this car. There you go. About this car, Matthew. What do we know so far? Not a lot.
Good job getting that picture up. I was laughing because I was watching Graham's face the whole time and watching it morph and twist. So they haven't released power or torque or any specs on this car beyond saying that it has a sort of 800 volt battery system. Obviously, it's fully electric. But they have said that it outperforms the SRT Hellcat in every performance metric. So presumably that means top speed, 0 to 100, quarter mile, all that stuff. It's a charger, but it to me looked a lot more like a Challenger follow-up in terms of the fascia, front and rear, and obviously it's got 2 doors. Maybe the most interesting and most talked about thing about this is that it has some form of exhaust system or noise simulator system. And I don't know if you can play.
Just so wrong on every level. Listen to you.
Hey, wait, Graham. I'm about to make it even more wrong for you. That's a Maserati platform under there, isn't it? Surely.
I mean, does that make it more wrong or less wrong? I'm not sure. I mean, that would be.
Does a Maserati platform come with Italian electrics?
What was that?
For more than 5 minutes.
I will say, Graham, in the show notes for this episode, the number one talking point on this segment is simply it just reads "Big Rant from Graham." So.
Now's your time. Now is your time to shine, Graham. Now is your time to shine.
Again, you guys box me into this little corner. You paint me as some Luddite anti-EV.
Dance, monkey, dance.
I'm not. But good God, can we just stop taking all the good things of the motoring world and saying, well, it's electric now. It's going to be a good thing for the environment. Have any of you guys ever actually driven or played with 6.2 litres of Hemi goodness? And I keep saying it's nothing to do with how quick it actually goes. Yes, I know you have, Richard. Shut up.
I think Matthew's probably driven a 6.2. Haven't you?
I've driven a 6.2.
Point of a muscle car. This is why I don't want a 2.3 litre Mustang. But just don't want one. Because I, being a 50-something male who probably is due for a midlife crisis and all the other bits and pieces, I like the sound of it and the feel and the oral the sensation of a big dirty old lump of melted down railway wagon bent roughly into a V8 shape, burning lots and lots of petrol and turning some of it into power and most of it into noise. And that's the man in me. Excuse me, sorry. There's something else. Call it another thing. Call it a charger. I don't care. Something else that starts with C.
I'm going to break this up to a couple of things. Firstly, I think Stellantis / Chrysler / I'm just going to suggest it's probably a bunch of middle-aged blokes in a room in Detroit somewhere deserve a round of applause for taking a late 90s Mercedes E-Class platform as far as they did. They took the stuff from underneath a Berlin taxi. Yep. And got it right through until 2022 as one of the fastest street cars in the world. So they deserve a round of applause for performing miracles. Now what they've got to do is
listen to the forums around America and the feedback in the last couple of days since announced. grown men all over America are crying real tears at the thought that the beloved, one of the last true muscle cars in America, so to speak, is going to be taken away from their ability, because these things are selling. It's not like nobody's buying particularly challenging.
And I bet you the price of every single one left on the road has just doubled.
Yeah. Yeah.
The interesting thing that Dodge has got to navigate now is how much of Italian is in that car. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's, for example, at the same time they have just launched another Dodge. I think it's a Dodge Hornet, I think they're calling it.
Yep.
Which is a name off a pretty legendary muscle car, and they've slapped it on a Alfa Romeo small to mid-size SUV, and they've literally glued a Dodge front onto it. The rest of the car is the same. The back's the same. The interior is pretty much the same. I think the drivetrain's the same. It's a PHEV. Well, at least one of them is a PHEV. How is America going to handle that? That's the question. Because at least when they were in Daimler and then since, they got to put a fairly big stamp on the car as their own. Sure, it was a Mercedes platform, but everything else was kind of American. This is not. Some of the stuff coming is very much rebadged Maserati or so on and so forth. And it's probably going to be just as jarring as jumping into the Maserati SUV, I'm trying to think of the name, and finding Jeep control buttons in there. It's such an interesting mix, and how they're going to navigate that, I think, is almost half the battle.
I had a interesting discussion in 2006, I think it was, with a senior salesman at a Chrysler dealership in Oklahoma City. About the 300 seat. He was absolutely adamant there was not one aspect of Mercedes-Benz in that car. It's just the idea. And he's the guy selling them. It hadn't even occurred to him, and therefore his customers, and I think he probably had a sneaking suspicion that there's no way in the world he's going to tell his customers that their brand spanking new prospective 300 seat was actually an E-Class under the skin. So you're right, they've done a really good job of that. And if you think about it, it's served them really well in terms of a product basis for a very long time. Can they keep on doing it? Yes, as long as the product, that the badge out of the parts box, like Hornet, I'm going to use that for a couple of years. As long as they continue to provide product that's good enough for the American public to accept the naming of it and the continuation of that model. Where they'll get unstuck is if they pick crap out of the global parts bin, so to speak. They say, that'll do. Stick a name on it that bears no resemblance, and bring the company down with them.
Yeah. The question is, if they don't, does that mean the end of Dodge?
Well, yeah, Dodge has certainly. I mean, Dodge was in the doldrums, as we know. I mean, they were one of those brands that was in real danger, I think, in America, of just vanishing into the pool of mediocrity. And they've done a fantastic job of just lifting that brand out to become, the hero brand of America when it comes to performance. You think Dodge, everyone thinks the same thing. No longer they think about minivans, although ironically, that's probably what made them the money. But it was things like the Charger, the Challenger. You think of names like Hellcat, like Demon, all those sort of different names. We all associate those with Dodge. And so for Dodge to steer away from that as being a part of their whole marketing psyche, I suppose, that'll be a really tough call, because it's got to appeal to a completely different demographic now. And that demographic is the Tesla generation, the Rivian generation, Polestar generation, looking at the cool kids, looking at the cool stuff. And they weren't the people buying Dodge muscle cars.
Yeah. Right. And on that, we shall end. So thank you again to our panel, Graham McDonald and Matthew Hansen. Please don't forget to go buy your tickets to Autotalk Live, autotalk.co.nz/live. And we will see you next week. Next week I'm going to be doing it from a dining table at a batch in Owakuni. So, we'll see you from there. I'm on a bit of a tour.
Nice for some.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, back to work, everyone. Catch you later.